got to tell me everything. Like for me, it was so amazing that you got the chance to work with Walter Mercado. You know, like it's a huge celebrity within the Hispanic community. And I was curious to know, like, how did you get the idea of doing it?
So I grew up with him, like so many people did, as as a presence in the household. And I remember watching him and just being amazed by him. And I had never seen, like many of us, I'd never seen anything like Walter before. And I was just mesmerized, and I didn't speak Spanish that well. But for me, Walter, I remember we all had to be quiet and listen to Walter, and then my grandma would tell me what he said. And so for me, it was almost like a religious experience, watching Walter as a kid. And I started thinking a lot about Walter, and I was like, whatever happened to Walter? Where did he go? And I was just finishing a documentary called Science Fair, and I was like, wow, someone really needs to capture the amazing person that is Walter Mercado if he's still around. And so I started looking around to try to figure out what happened to him. And in that process of trying to find him, I found two other filmmakers who had also independently decided that they wanted to make a Walter Mercado movie. And basically they asked me if I would want to join their team. And within 10 minutes of talking, I think we all had decided that we had the same vision and that we would do it. And so we, Karim Tapsh, who's my co-director, who's a Miami boy from, he's a Cuban boy from Miami, and Alex Fumero, also a Cuban boy from Miami. Karim found a niece at an estate sale and basically asked if they would put us in touch. And so we had this long phone call that we had prepared for to pitch the idea to Walter. And we had prepared for it so much. We had, gone through every possible question that we might be asked. And we got on the phone with him, and his first question was, what are your astrological signs? And so it was like the weirdest kind of pitch job interview I'd ever had. But it went really well, and he was on board, and he said, let's do it. So we spent 2.5 years basically making the film, and it will come out in July.
Wow. And I can imagine that it was hard for you to create that relationship because Walter is a very private person. So another thing that I wanted to ask you is, how did you guys manage to build a relationship with Walter Mercado when, to be honest with you, like everybody knows him, but not really, because you don't know a lot about his private life. So that was a challenge, and you made it. So how did it happen?
Well, yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest challenges. I think, Walter has been in front of a camera for 50 years of his life, and he is probably the best, the most camera-ready person, media-trained person in the world. So getting him to understand that we were trying to make something different, and that we wanted to see what he looked like, without the layers of makeup on, without the capes on. He was not interested in that at first. He was suspicious of it. But the longer that we spent with him and the more he got to know us, and the closer that we got to him and his family, I think he started to trust us. And he didn't like talking about difficult things. He really didn't like talking about, what happened, what went wrong in his life. He didn't like saying anything negative about anyone. So, it was a real process of working with him and talking with him, and we spent a lot of time. I think the secret was time. Just, we were there, a lot with him. And, he was a very kind man, and I think maybe what you get to see in the movie, which I didn't know going in, was that he's very funny. He has like an incredible sense of humor, and he's self-deprecating, he loves making fun of himself, he loves teasing, he loves joking with us, and always in a kind-hearted way, but he really loves, he has a great sense of humor.
No, and that I wanted to ask you, because we all know Walter Mercado, but we know him as like this extroverted person, so open, and I wanted to ask you if he was like that behind scenes, no?
Yeah. No, he was so full of love. He really wanted everybody in the room to feel good, and his life was devoted to making people feel good, which it's a very rare trait. Although he loved himself a lot, and you see that, like his house is full of pictures of himself. He also loved everybody else as well. And so a lot of people look at him and are like, oh, he's a narcissist and all of these things. Like, but he's a very unique kind of narcissist that loves everybody else, maybe more than they even love themselves. So he, for example, when he was leaving a room, he would have to go around and say goodbye to every single person and make them feel special. So it would take, an hour to leave anywhere if we had to, because he had to go thank everybody for being there, for everything they've done, and make them feel special and loved and happy. And it's a real, I've never met anybody like Walter. There is nobody like Walter.
Yes, just if you get the chance to experience this spiritual world that he lived in, because a lot of Latinos, we believe in the esoteric world and the spiritual things. Were you a believer before you started making the documentary, or you became intrigued during the process, or how did it go for you?
I'm a real skeptic about a lot of things. I'm it's not that I'm not a believer, but I'm not sure, and I don't pretend to know the answer. But I love Walter's world. And I'm a former investigative journalist, scientist. I have a lot of skepticism about these sorts of things. But there were a lot of weird coincidences, a lot of weird things that happened that seem impossible, like the way that the three of us came to be a team. It was all within, I called Alex within 10 minutes of him having a call with Kareem, which is on the same day. It's like, those things usually don't happen. You usually don't have a partnership that just happens by happenstance like that. Walter, we submitted the final cut to Sundance on November 1st, and then Walter passed away on November 2nd. And there's a lot of things that are just about the process of making the film that were very coincidental, and it's hard, it's hard when you're working with somebody who is so magical and mystical to believe that none of that could be true. But who knows? I don't know. It's definitely made me think once or twice about things going on.
Did he show you something about life that you now treasure? Like, did you get a lesson from him that you won't forget?
But I think the more important lesson I learned was just how to be a better person. And these are the lessons that we all learned as children, to treat everybody with love and kindness and respect. And that hatred is a feeling that you can unlearn, or hatred is just an easy feeling that we all have to really process through. These are things that we learned as a kid, that he taught us as a kid, that I think are kind of the hardest lessons to enact. And every day you have to make the choice to be kind and to be empathetic and to love people who are different than you are. And so I try now more than ever to honor Walter in that way, with love.
And I think that it's very important that young women like you, Latinas, are communicating this message to a general audience. So in that sense, how hard for you was to be able to take this project to a very popular streaming platform like Netflix?
Great.
How did you do it?
A great question, and that was an inherent challenge to the film. Is how do you make a movie that honors the Latino culture and the Latino public who it's meant for? We want to do a very authentic job of capturing the important parts of who this person is, but we also wanted to we want other people who didn't grow up with him to fall in love with him. So Netflix on July 8th, it will go out to 190 countries, 30 languages, and we're super excited. But to be able to do both at the same time is a really hard task and a really fun challenge. So we were nonstop in the edit booth trying to figure out what percentage of this is Spanish, what percentage of this is English, how much explaining do we have to do in this, how much explaining do we have to do in this, and it was quite a challenge, and but that's what makes it fun. I think the problems and the solutions are what make the job interesting. But I really hope that we did both. I hope that we made something authentic for our community to have as a legacy of a very important person, and also that we were able to share him and make sure he's celebrated by everybody.
you the best of luck with this project, and we keep in touch.